and welcome to the DripDropz Catalyst After Town Hall. I'm Lloyd, and today we are talking about the Catalyst Risk Assessment Protocol. This is an experimental idea that is assigning a form of risk assessment to Catalyst proposals as an alternative or additional method for reviewing Catalyst proposals for future rounds. Again, this will not happen in Fund 10. But this is something that we are using Fund 10 to do a dry run on. And then if that does work well, we will look to put in a proposal for Fund 11 to build a Catalyst improvement that would actually add a feature like this to future Catalyst rounds. So today is it's a preview. It's also a little entrepreneur lesson on what risk assessments are and why they're important. And then lastly, if it works out well, this could be something that we could all be having in future Catalyst rounds to help us better judge and understand what the risk is of proposals that are coming into the system. So, any questions before we get started? Anybody want to pipe in? And thanks, the acronym. You got to have a little fun with this stuff. You got to have a little, little something to market it. This is ultimately a crap detector. That's what risk assessment comes down to. You look at and look for problems that that could sort of be obvious, if you will, if you take an objective measure. So, and that's something I'll say something about Catalyst. I love Catalyst, been a participant since Fund 7. We all know there are issues. We all know there are things that we can do better. So this is just my attempt at trying to do something to help improve the goal for the whole community, which is, an improved innovation fund that's accessible. Lots of people can get into and hopefully fund good projects that will benefit the whole community, right? So that's the goal with what we're doing here. So what is a risk assessment? A risk assessment is you take a combination of objective measures, which are things that are data points, and you combine them and things that are not really subject to your opinion, and you combine them with some subjective measures. And those subjective measures could be anything like you don't like it, or you're not sure that it fits a purpose, or so it's a combination of those two factors that make a risk assessment kind of an art, but also part of science. And the more you do them, the easier it is to do them in the future. Something DripDropz has used almost since the very, very beginning. I think in the first couple of months, we let any token on to the protocol without any issues. We just opened the gates and people came in and put their token on. We had an understanding at one point that wasn't working, because there was a token that wanted on that looked a little, like it might have been a problem. And so we actually stopped onboarding tokens and said, okay, well, how do we evaluate risk? And we built an entire spreadsheet system on evaluating risk of every token. And we apply that to every single token that comes to DripDropz to get on board. And we make that information public, in advance. And there's actually, the software's not quite built yet, but we're building a tool that's going to actually automatically do the risk assessment. It's like a self-assessment almost at this point, because we've dialed it in so much. So the idea here and what we've got here today, I'm gonna show off this and this is it's taking my knowledge of having done risk assessments for DripDropz all this time and having done Catalyst reviews for all this time, and it's a combination of those things. So I'm going to share a screen here. Let's see here. Find the right one. Sorry, guys. It is this one right here. There we go. That'll make it easier now. Okay, here we go. All right. So this spreadsheet here is what we are using for Fund 10 for the Catalyst Risk Assessment Protocol. I'm starting out with some criteria. The criteria that we're looking at first, these are all objective measures. These are all your history with working within Catalyst. Now, this is me personally. This is actually my user. What I've done is that if you've put the criteria that I'm running with right now, if you've put in 5 or fewer proposals per fund, then you're probably not spamming the system. If you're putting in more than 5, there's a possibility that you're spamming the system. And so we want to make note of that. So what we've done is that if you have 0 proposals, it's a 0. That's another important element of risk assessment, is that you don't penalize somebody for something they either have no control over or something that should be done. That should always just be a 0. It's no plus or minus for that. So if you weren't here, you're not penalized because you weren't here for previous funds. If you're adding 1 to 5 proposals, you're getting a positive point because you're participating, and participation is a key to moving forward. If you're putting too many proposals on, it's a red flag, and so every proposal above 5, it's a -1. So I know we've seen it. There's a couple of people out there that have put 20 and 30 proposals out. A lot of it already looks spammy. That would give them a -20, and that's going to already make it extremely difficult for them to pass the risk assessment. And so it's an early filter to help. Now, the next thing we look at is whether or not you've won a proposal. If you've won a proposal, you do get a +1. The community thought well enough of your proposal that that you should get some benefit from that. But then we also have to make sure that they delivered the proposal. So what this next check is that if they've won but they haven't finished delivering, then they should lose some points until they deliver. And like, for instance, I actually ran Kirkos, go ahead.
Hey, sorry, I just wrote the question right now. Projects can take a lot of time, right? And funds can be like in between. So how do I account for that?
So, and that's what I'm hoping to do here. That's the next question after this one. So this question, that you can get dinged in this question for having proposals you haven't finished yet. However, you can gain what we do is that if they've been paid most of their proposal, then they are dinged less than if they haven't finished all their like for instance, if I had a proposal that was 500,000 ADA and I've only received 20,000 ADA of that proposal so far, I've got a lot of work to do, and I'm asking for more funds. I at least have to be cautious with that person, right? Because remember, this is not it's not a cut and dry like this. And I want everybody to understand, this should never be, oh, I'm going to absolutely vote no on every proposal that doesn't meet this criteria. That's not how this is designed. It's actually designed to give you some numbers to work from, to then determine really how much time you want to spend on evaluating the proposals and whether or not it's worthy of your time to go further and deeper, right? So this one here, if they've delivered in the past, they get a 1. If they haven't finished delivering, there's a you can get a -1. And then again, this is somewhere where it could be modified as well. Maybe it's a 0 if they're 95% of the way there, or something along those lines, because that's also I know Project Noom, for instance, they have several proposals that they've done all the work and they've not had anybody be able to close out the proposals yet. And that's just because a person that was on their team left and they haven't been able to close out. So they completed the work. So would you ding them in this case? I would say, and again, since this is an objective measure, but not fully, this one you could say, don't ding them. Give them the 0 or give them the +1 for completion if you see proof that the work is done. This next one here tries to capture that as well. Again, this is me. So I had one proposal that I won in Fund 8, and I completed it. So because I have 100% and I completed it, I don't get any extra points for having completed it. It's just a 0. It just levels off. But if and again, I ran this on a couple of teams that have some proposals out right now, and I got, like -2, -3 for a couple of those teams. But then interestingly enough, if they had lots of experience, if they've been here for a while, one of the teams has been here since Fund 2 that I ran this on, and even with a -3 here, they still were very high positive. They were still like a +15 because they've been here for a while and they've delivered lots of projects. So that's another thing. And again, this is about risk assessment, right? So if you're a brand new team and you've only started last round and you're already asking for more funds, that's a higher risk than a team who's delivered since Fund 2, 3, 4. And this models that well. It showed that teams that have only recently started, if they're asking for more, there are a higher risk for delivery than a team that's been delivering for a long time consistently. So it's a good model so far from that perspective. Next is proof of community. I feel like this is an important thing. It is slightly subjective in that if they have no account, they should get a -1. You really should have some presence on Twitter, LinkedIn, GitHub. If you have a presence and you don't have a big presence, you still count. You still get the 0 because that's just something that there should be ways for people to reach you. And if you happen to have more than 500 connections, like I do on Twitter and LinkedIn, then you can gain a +1 for those as well. The way this is set up, it would allow you, if you had multiple proposers within your proposals, you could actually run this for each of your multiple proposers and get an average across those. So that's another thing, is that let's say you've had some trouble in the past, but now you're working with a new team. Your trouble in the past doesn't drag down the new team. It actually helps build you up, so that, because you're working with a broader group of people. So maybe this time you'll have better success than you did in the past. Or if you have had success in the past, that also gives you the opportunity to say, hey, this is a new person that's in the space, but I've known them for a long time, so I'm going to co-propose with them to help them out. Also perfectly valid and viable way, and it models well in this. I did throw some suggested metrics down here. And so what I'm doing is imagining, because right now we evaluate really on 3 major areas: the value for money, accountability, and the key performance indicators, right? Those are kind of the things that you're looking at, like first of all, is this worth it for Cardano? That's probably the most important. Then the next one is is there accountability? Can I actually tell from what this person put out that they're going to give something that's useful, that to measure that they did what they said they were going to do? And then the other one is how are they measuring their own success? How are they checking to make sure that whatever it is that they did was important? And so this is kind of my metrics for this part of it, is to say, look, if the score is over a +10, then if you're looking at that person's proposal, really the value for money is the most important thing. Are they, they're clearly a deliverer. They clearly have a good proof of humanity and community in our space, and they've delivered well. So if they're proposing something, is that proposal worth it? And it may not be. Like that's the one major criteria that's really still out there. But then if they're not there, like where I'm I'm new-ish in the space, Fund 7, I guess I'm new-ish in the space, and so maybe you check my accountability measures more to make sure that what I'm putting out is visible. Like you'd be able to tell, oh yeah, he said he was going to deliver this and he delivered it. So his accountability is high enough. So now it's still an okay move to move forward. And then if you're in that 0 to -10 range, like really just pay very close attention to the whole proposal. Are there key performance indicators there, and are they good? Is the accountability really there? Is there value for it? Be skeptical, but not not necessarily throw it out. Now, and then if their score is below -10, and I had to look to find a couple people that could get below -10. It wasn't easy. I found a couple, but it wasn't easy. And for those guys, like, I'm just saying, be extremely cautious of proceeding. Just, is it worth your time to evaluate that proposal any further? Kyrikos, go ahead.
Okay, that's an awesome overview. So, do I get this right that you can actually get to a +10 without having actually gotten a proposal approved?
I don't think you can do a +10 without having an approval. You
So
should not be able to.
if I had like if I propose a couple of proposals every fund since fund one,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be getting +1s for each fund, right?
Well, that's true. That's true. That's interesting. That's a good feedback, because we may have to give, and this could be very interesting. We could actually cap on the proposed. That would actually be a really good idea, is capping proposed, so that you can have a maximum number of points from proposed. That's very good feedback. This is why I wanted to do this. This is exactly why
I think there's
wanted.
a bit of nuance to these KPIs, right? Because if
Yes.
you have like if you're a serial proposer,
Right.
but don't get anything voted in, then there's something wrong, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. So that's a very good feedback, and I think I think so. That's part of it. I'm going to take that back as a note, because that is something, and it's quite possible. Like, what we can do is we can take the proposed round versus the one round, and we would be able to get a single number from those two together. And I think that's going to end up being a better metric.
Right, like a compound metric. Yeah, sure.
Yes, I'm with you
Sounds
100%.
right.
I'm going to add that in there.
100%.
Thank you for that. Thorsten, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking kind of like normally you measure risk on likelihood and impact. So likelihood is kind of like how likely is it that kind of the risk in itself is going to happen? And
Mm-hmm.
if it happens, how hard is it going to hit you? So I was just wondering in this matrix, and perhaps I missed it out. Do we have any reflections of the um, proposal size which got funded on the delivery side? So because it's probably easier to deliver 5 projects for 7.5 grand than
Mm-hmm.
deliver 5 projects for 100,000. Yeah. So just
Also,
from
very good. So in this part here, because this is the user history part, we do in the proposal evaluation, there is a metric in there that I'm working on, that is for the current round. But again, I like that feedback for the previous rounds. We are getting the amount of ADA requested here, and we're only using it as a ratio so far, but we could set, that's another place where we could set a +1 or -1 based on if it's over a certain dollar figure or under a certain dollar figure. So you'd only get the benefit if it's over, if you've delivered over a certain amount of money. If I'm thinking about it correctly, you would not actually penalize the person who did the low dollar ones if they did several of them, right? So I wouldn't want to put the bar too high on that. Something like 50,000, and we'll just stick with ADA for now, because going forward that's going to be fine anyway. So somewhere around 50,000 ADA. I think the minimum is 15,000. So if they deliver anything from 15,000 to 50,000 ADA, that's probably a +1. And if they've delivered anything higher than 50,000, that may be a +2 kind of thing. We could even have 3 tiers for that, maybe.
another measure could be that you have the ratio between delivered value kind of closed out
Yeah.
versus requested. So kind of like if someone delivered something already for, let's say, 100,000, would
Right.
the community kind of think that they're worthwhile kind of to get another 70,000 if they delivered on it? Yeah. So that ratio in itself could also be a good measure to say there is a lower risk than if someone delivered for, let's say, 7,000 in the past and wants to have 250,000 now.
Excellent. Yeah, and I can see how both of those metrics are both the one that you and the one that Kirikos have just added, both over time further improve this. It's funny that this is working fine now because there's only the 10 funds to deal with, and there's not been any of these, very much of the massive delivery up till now. But I'm, as we go forward, I can see that that's going to be very interesting and a very good metric. So I've got notes for both of those. I appreciate both of you guys adding those in, because this is exactly what I'd hoped to get today was, finding some deeper metrics that we can use as we're going forward.
Can I chip another one? Sorry
Yes.
if I just grab it.
Oh, please do. Please do.
I have been kind of like for the Fund 10 in the team of people who kind of did the proof of milestone assessments.
Okay.
And you could, some people see, just deliver like a clockwork against what they promised. They delivered what they said they're going to deliver. They delivered on time, and it was kind of an easy assessment because they actually did what they said they're going to do.
Mhm.
And then you see others which have a time slippage, or which have a slippage in what they actually initially said they're going to deliver. We start to have this backwards and forwards of, oh, we have to change effectively the proposal. So if we are measuring that one going forward, and that probably needs kind of a little bit of conversation effectively with the ops team,
Mhm.
that would give us also good indication whether people kind of actually do what they say. And if they do, the risk in itself in a certain bandwidth is probably lower than if someone says, I'm going to do, but never does. Yeah.
Totally agree. And I think right now the biggest difficulty with that is that it's all in spreadsheets and kind of all over the place a little, right?
Yeah, it sucks.
It sucks. But you're right. And I'm agreeing with you that in this, if we're going to use the new interface in Fund 10, if we get that interface, and if you said you were going to do it in 6 months and you delivered it in 6 months, then yeah, you should, that should be a +1 on your risk assessment score, right? Like you delivered on time, on budget, that kind of thing. Like that's a positive. Not to say that there's anything wrong with pivoting when you need to, but again, if you had to pivot and you had to pivot 4 or 5 times or whatever over multiple projects, and I know some projects like that, they still delivered successfully, but they had to pivot to get where they needed to get. That does account for a higher degree of risk for future funding for that team. Have they improved? And then again, if they do, and their next fund round they get funded again and they deliver on time, well, then so there might be a notion of history as well. If it's older proposals that they, it's like sort of let's go with a ratio. So we end up with, if it's from Fund 1 through 6, it's a 0.1 or something. It's like a very small change, versus if it's if it's the last Fund 9, and they were pivoting in Fund 9, then there's a higher risk that might still happen again. You see what I'm saying? So we can kind of, over time, I think that's how I would assess that. It would, like, over time that would decay.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, excellent. Do we, on the user history side, these are great points, and I appreciate the new points, guys. Is there anybody else that would like to, before we move on to the proposal side, does anybody have any other areas that you might propose in the user history side? What's on any other metrics we can look at?
Time of engagement of the users, kind of when registered the first time on IdeaScale.
Okay, time of
Yeah.
engagement.
So it doesn't necessarily, I mean, obviously we kind of reflect that now, but I think there is a period of time which you have to take to get into it.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, there is normally credibility which is coming in through someone who has been in the ecosystem for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know whether that could also be a factor, because actually that, in combination with there is a good track record, gives a certain level of assurance. right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's right.
So if someone kind of has been registered on idea scale in Fund 5 or so, they have been around for a while.
That's right. Yeah.
So kind of at which moment in time do you consider yourself a veteran? I get you. Yeah, Fund 7. I also joined with Fund 7, and there are some people joined in Fund 1.
Right.
Congratulations to them. They have been around a lot longer. They have been through a lot other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I could say they also took the benefit of kind of things which happened in the early days, which now kind of are different.
Right.
But there
Yeah, you
is
certainly can't get away with stuff now that you could in Fund 1, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So that way you might be able to reflect it. Yeah, or first time submitted. You kind somehow catch that, but just from the proposal perspective,
Mm-hmm.
probably it's also worthwhile thinking about a measurement of the team in itself.
Yeah. Have they been in the space for some period of time? I
Yeah.
definitely agree. Steve, go ahead. Is that Steve Lockhart or Steve Lukehart?
Steve Typo. That's what that is.
Steve Typo. Hey, Steve.
That's good to see you. I may not have caught the complete context of what you want to do with this, but
Okay.
I'm thinking one thing that would be interesting to track as far as proposers in my mind, and this is just because of the way I think it would be interesting to somehow keep an eye on the people who come from one background outside of blockchain and whether or not they're coming into the same field within blockchain or if they're doing something unexpected, and like maybe maybe they've made a connection that isn't obvious, like if somebody comes out of, oh God, I don't know. I think about these kinds of things this way, because I think geometrical growth, fractal growth is always surprising.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I do believe it's possible for people who come in and make proposals and their background is good, but they're wanting to do something completely outside of what they've done before. And I think that may be valuable as well as a warning sign, right? They could be just completely delusional in trying this thing.
Right.
And yet something catalyzes people to do things like that.
And that's interesting because that parallels with like my own journey, right? So I came up in an IT background, so you would look at me and say, well, he's probably got blockchain credentials. I do, and came up in an IT background. So it's kind of in the air, right? But my first proposal was related to farming. Right. Because I've pivoted in my life and I'm, less like I'm still in IT to an extent because I'm obviously working in blockchain companies, but I'm more focused now on, human interests, social interests. It's just changed. I've just, as a human, I've moved in a different direction than I used to be. I used to be all about the bits and bytes, and now not so much. I'm, more into the human connection. So it is interesting, and you're right. That one can go both ways. So that's why with the risk assessment stuff, I'm cautious about adding anything that's too subjective to opinion. Where I don't want to I'm sorry, I don't want to give an impression that this is like a fortune teller type of thing, right? So I'm trying to make sure that I don't go too far in that respect, but I also I like it, and I'm going to put a pin in it because it could be one of the subjective measures, because there are some in the next slide. There's some subjective measures, and this area would not be harmed by having one or two subjective measures to go along with the objective measures.
Well, I think because you're going to all this trouble anyway, it's a nice pointer to add in to what you're tabulating, right? For maybe future use. This data may be useful in the future, and you're going through all this motion anyway.
Right. Yeah, and thankfully, a lot of this I'm actually going to work with Darlington, because a lot of this stuff I literally just pulled it directly by looking at my profile on Lido, right? So the data's already there for most of this, so we should be able to just plug a name in and fill this most of this part out pretty much
Well, you know,
automatically.
with me, you know, my goal in filling out this shit was to say as little as possible. So, you know, like you'll have people like that too, that exists.
Exactly. So that's what this will do. This will, like, whenever I'm done, this is going to fill out the basics. And then that's why it would be great to have a couple of subjective measures, like you're saying. So that would be where I would do the research and add my own subjective measures here. Yeah, Thorsten, go ahead.
I'm probably going to blow your mind now, because it would be cool if you would have this assessment, which is on the one hand side objective, but where there are subjective elements in it
Mhm.
to compare them across the community.
Exactly
Yeah,
right. Yes.
so not just have the normally kind of like the voice of the individual might not be right, but kind of take 50 people and ask them, the truth might be quite close to what the community in itself assumes in that
And
context.
that's what I'm hoping. I want I would love to get this in lots of people's hands. I am going to make this available if anybody else has time during Fund 10 that they'd like to do a few proposals, because I really would like to do exactly what you're saying. I'd love to put this on a scatter plot and see, you know, who who gave what with the subjective measures. The objective measures, obviously, they're going to be automatic pretty much, so they're going to be, hard to be wrong. They should match up, and we'll almost do that. Like that's the way we would test it in the first round, is do those objectives all match up? Did everybody take the data, look at the data the same way, put it in the system the same way? Because if they didn't, then I may have a problem with how I've described the system, right? And again, I'm hoping Lido is going to be able to help me, and we'll be able to just nail down getting like an import for the objective measures for all of this. And if I can, that's gonna eliminate that, and it will just be, hey, here's, you pick these couple of parameters on the user, you pick these couple of parameters on the proposal, and then there you go. And
There's just one person I have at the moment in mind where I think this could kind of blur the picture heavily, and I will put the name out so that you understand what I'm talking about.
Okay.
If I would put Yoram onto this, where would Yoram end up in this context? Because he connects kind of like fresh blood like crazy to the community. Yeah, so he's bringing people from left, right, and center. So his credibility is helping to deliver, because he has a very, very firm eye on that one. But I would think that he mingles a lot. Let me put it this way. Yeah. So if you would graph that out in a graph, you would probably have a highly connective graph around him with different people, and some people we don't even know yet. Yeah. So he is bringing new people in. He is doing that quite actively. And in that context, there is a value which comes with it. Yes, it is a little bit of a risk, but on the other side, if you don't break out of your given surrounding, then you're not connecting new people. So
right. And that's my hope, is that's what I was trying to build in, where you would have multiple proposers in a proposal and averaging across them. That my hope is that someone who's new gets, if they have a mentor, like let's call Yorm a mentor, then that proposal itself with those two people in it, and Yorm having, relatively decent success with the deliveries, and this new person, it kind of gives that new person that nudge up to get their proposal reviewed more by people than otherwise. When you're 1,500 proposals in queue, and everybody's screaming into the wind, like, who are you going to take time for? I don't know this person, so I'm probably going to skip them. Well, but I do know this person, so maybe I won't skip them. And again, that's what was hoping the model would pick up, is being able to find those elements. So let's let's move forward to, and again, just one last thing on this, this is only about kind of if it's worth your time to evaluate the proposal, to either vote yes on it or to vote no on it, because the idea of abstaining is definitely it's definitely there. If you have a proposal and this proposer's history is very negative, are you going to waste a lot of time looking at the positive merits of that proposal, or are you going to say, hey, clean up your act first? And there should be room for anybody to clean up their act in this. There should be room for someone to put in a small proposal, deliver on a small proposal, and move forward, and then improve their score. Or, like, a lot of the negatives in here are from not having yet delivered. Simply deliver on your promises, right? So I put DripDropz in here, and right now they have 2 open proposals, and I think I managed to get DripDropz down to a -1, being really harsh on DripDropz right now, because there's a couple things that were pivoted, there's a couple things that were late deliveries, and so I got it down to a -1, which would still be okay to get more movement. Just finish closing out. But guess what? This week we're closing out the open source voting. It's going to, most likely close by Friday. I think I'll start doing the video on it on Friday. And the other proposal, the Main Street Suite, which is a huge project, it's going to be at the end of July. It's getting closed out. So come August timeframe, DripDropz, instead of being a -1, is going to be like a plus. It's like a +9 or something, right? So, and they've only ever done 2 proposals, but it would be a +9 at that point, because everything would have worked out and it would be completely delivered. So, and to me that's right. And that's me also eating my own dog food. Is there a risk if DripDropz doesn't complete those proposals? Is there a risk for DripDropz to take money in Fund 10? There would be. We're going to be closed before the voting starts, so I don't feel there's a risk. However, if I weren't, it warrants that, hey, that's a risk, and that's a factor that we want to take into account before we allow more funding to go to an entity, whatever the entity is. So that's me eating my own dog food. So that's another way I kind of pretty sure that this is, an okay thing, because just being objective of my own limitations and what our team is going through and what they're having to do to deliver, it made sense. So just sharing that with you guys too, that's how we really looked at it. So I wanted you guys to see that and understand that it's really not a dead and stop filter, but it is how much time are you really going to spend evaluating those proposals from that company when there's all these other proposals to evaluate. So let's move into, this is the individual proposal evaluation at this point. Now this one's short still. This is one where I'm hoping again for some more good feedback, because I'd like to find some more subjective measures and also potentially some more objective measures that we can find. So this is relatively simple. You put the ADA requested in here, and you check the % of the fund requested. What I'm trying to look at is good citizenship from this. If it is less than 5% of the challenge setting, then we offer a +2. You're making a proposal. It's a reasonable proposal, for a reasonable sum of money. If it's less than 7.5%, it's +1. If it's less than 10%, 0. So that's kind of the mark I'm setting. If you go over 10% of a challenge setting, you're asking for an awful large chunk of money. The risk there is that you will take so much of the funds that other projects won't be able to receive any, right? This obviously wouldn't work for the new challenge category for Catalyst, because it's 100% of the fund, but that's a special case. Any other proposal, any other challenge setting, some of them are even set, like Catalyst Open is set where there's a maximum, right? And that maximum works out to just right at 5% actually in that case. So So I'm looking at it. It's not to say that you can't ask for more, but if you do, that's a higher risk to the whole community. If we give you that funds, we gave you that fund, and if you don't deliver, well, what about the 50 other proposals that could have fit in that space? And yes, I'm looking at you, Daedalus Turbo. 50 or 100 other proposals that could have fit in the space of that 700,000 US dollars that is tied up still. That 150 some thousand have been delivered, and that's it. And it's questionable as to whether there was any value. There may be, but there you go. That's a risk the community took by allowing that proposal to get voted in. Thorsten, go ahead.
I would put another one onto that one, and it would be a little bit more holistic.
Okay.
And I can rationalize that. I would say, how much is that of the overall fund?
Okay.
And I would take the top 20% of that, and normally, kind of according to Pareto, they should deliver 80% of the value, right?
Yes. Yes.
So perhaps I don't know yet how that could be included as a factor, but obviously, kind of like if you're in the top cream of stuff which is taken, then obviously you have to have a really good case. Otherwise, it's kind of like, yeah. So
exactly, and that's the whole point. Like, we're trying to get these numbers to where it's like this is low. Why?
The reason why I think per category is a bit challenging, because there are some categories which have quite a big pot in itself, and there are others which have actually quite small pot comparably, and it makes it hard to get effectively a reasonable project in some cases out of it if you just take this threshold. So therefore, perhaps the second measure, which is taking the overall funding.
Yeah, I'll model it that way too. I'm going to go ahead and try it, modeling it with the challenge setting percentage and the total fund setting, and figure out a way to weight the two of those together, because that I agree with you. I think that's another good metric to bring in. And again, this is what this is. This is, how do we raise the red flag, and how do we raise the red flag in an objective way? Right. And so that's why so much of this right now has been what's been done and what's being proposed from that measure. The next one is open or closed source. I'm not saying it's not okay to do closed source, but the community benefits less from closed source and takes more risk. If you do deliver a closed source product, the community gets access to your closed source product however you present it, and can use it, but they don't get any really of the lessons learned. They don't get the software, they don't get the code, they can't replicate it. So that's a ding. If it's some combination of open and closed, we're just going to say it's 0. That's fine. And then if it is a fully open source project, if it can be reused by the community, then that's a +1, because I think that is even if they fail, the code that they do deliver could have some value to some other project later. Somebody else could pick up the torch and run with it. So there's a benefit there. Below that, I bring in the average of the proposer's history score, and this is where we start to wrap it in. And obviously in this case it's just me in that one, so showing the 8 across the board on mine. But I do feel like the average of your proposers is an important metric right here at this point. And this is where, and again, I like the one that Thorsten wants to add, and I'm going to find a way to add that one in, and then put a ratio together that weights those two with each other. The percent of the challenge, and it's probably whichever is higher is going to be the metric, because again, that shows a greater risk, right? So whichever's higher is going to be the one that's going to get you toward the negative numbers. So I think that's probably how I would do it, is even if it's 20% of the challenge setting, but the challenge setting is only 50,000 ADA, and it's 11%, or no, that would make it like 2% of the total fund, or whatever, some minuscule number, 0.01% of the challenge of the overall. it's not a big impact on the whole community, but it's a big impact on that challenge. So we would weight that slightly differently. That, other people in that challenge will definitely feel the impact of that proposal, but not so much the whole space if it was especially small. So that's a tough one, but I'll work it out. I'll work on it. Next, and this is, to me, this is the replacement of the star system. The star ratings haven't been terribly useful. And instead of doing that, it is a simple subjective, is the proposal impactful? Yes, unsure, or no. And same thing with feasibility, and same thing with value for money. It's just simply taking the three major areas of the proposal and giving me a yes or no. Now, this does not do away with community reviews. It just it could potentially eliminate the star rating in community reviews if we chose to, because it would instead give points or take points away from the proposal just by reading. Now, obviously, this is my proposal, so I put ones on there, but you might go read one of my proposals and say, Lloyd, that's the value for money's not there. And that's okay. That's your opinion. That's your subjective opinion. And then the negative one is welcomed because you don't feel the value for money there. I actually personally want to know that. And I'd actually like to know that before the round closes. I did put in a request this round for doing the education series on our Urban Farmer D app. It requires studio time, and it's very expensive, and we found some very inexpensive shortcuts to get it done, but it's still $75,000. Is the community interested in spending that $75,000? I honestly, I don't know, because as much as I tried to get feedback beforehand, there wasn't a lot of time to get that feedback. And having this process front loading before we get through the proposal would allow the community it's not time to go in and make community reviews. It's time to go in and make a value judgment looking through the proposal. Okay, do I feel that has the value for the money? Yes or no? And we could front load this whole process prior to the close of the editing rounds, and then go from that to the community review round, and the reviewers could just write reviews, and then those could be available for people to read. Go ahead, Thorsten.
I mean, this goes out of the risk assessment in itself, but obviously kind of there is an element of risk in itself can be lowered by putting certain controls into place. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So one control which we're putting into place at the moment is this milestone reviews. So effectively, even if you get the money, you still have to deliver, and if you don't deliver, you more or less don't get the money. So that's kind of like a slowdown on that side. The thing which kind of annoyed me most this time was that every single time we're changing effectively the form which has to be submitted. And I get it. You want to kind of optimize things, but on the other side, it becomes highly disruptive, which kind of means like even if you had it thought out, you might still have to kind of rewrite everything and kind of put it into different words and put it into different forms. And the time pressure coming out of this 3 weeks is not helping. Let me put it this way. Yeah. So
I experienced that too.
If I would be able to think about a proposal, let's say for 3-4 months, and I know in 4 months I want to submit it, I have ways and means. So I think this pre-submission stage, and to bring it more into a collaboration feedback loop, perhaps even closed group, whatever. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, kind of there is I saw proposals where I thought, hold on for a minute, they copied from each other, kind of, and it might be that they both had the same idea, or so someone had an idea and someone else picked up on the idea and wrote also a proposal on it. I get all of this one, but it would dramatically help to increase the quality by shifting left in the software development. We would say try to find the bugs as early as possible in the process, not at the very end.
Yes.
And I think finding this they cannot deliver, or it's not well thought through and it's hard to deliver, is driven a little bit by the time frame of writing that stuff, and you don't know what you have to write until they submit the form.
That's right.
And it is driven also by the fact of the not really existing predictability. So do we really have to kind of run the whole train in the same way all the time, or doesn't it also make sense at a certain moment in time to get more stability and have more of a contingent assessment and a contingent funding, rather than kind of like this big ropes where everyone kind of is trying to bring the act together, and some do it a little bit better and others do it a little bit worse. Yeah. So I think specifically in this round, you can clearly see kind of like we went through a catalyst winter of a year. Yeah, and that reflects itself in the number of proposals. I find it not very efficient to kind of move the train every single time the way we're moving it right now. If
Right.
we would be able to smooth that out a little bit more, it could be beneficial, I think, for the whole system.
So, and I'm trying to look forward right now. I'm looking at, I'm assuming that the IO Catalyst team is going to win their proposal. I can't make that assumption, like, just, it could happen that they don't, but
Someone did a risk assessment. What happens if not?
Yeah, well, I have, and I'll tell you the risk assessment. So here's the bottom line. If we approve IOHK to run the Catalyst fund for the next year, funds 11, 12, and 13, the community gets access to 200 million ADA through this Catalyst process that we at least have some degree of control over and some degree of understanding of. If that does not happen and we vote that down for whatever reason, whoever the party is that wins has 3 months to stand up probably an impossible task. They're welcome to try. I would give them my full-throated support if I could, but it's highly unlikely that anyone can stand up an organization in 3 months and be prepared for Fund 11 and keep people working. So the reality is that they would be on the hook for Fund 11, 12, and 13. They'd have roughly a year to do it. So 3-4 month cycles to do it all, with no real background and no, I mean, they have access to the existing tools, but do those people all just walk away from their desks and stop working? My guess is they do. And that we end up not getting that 150 million additional ADA coming back into the community through the innovation fund, and we have another Catalyst winter is my impression of what would happen if it doesn't go through. Steve, go ahead.
If input output doesn't win that vote, do they turn over the work they've done so far?
It's open source, so yes.
So all of it is?
All of it. It's there. I actually follow the commits on the GitHub. They are working every day in there. I see commits every single day as they are moving toward the end goal. But again, they have a chief architect that has been thinking and acting on this for a year now and building this for a year. Right. They've been open source for 4 or 5 months ish now. So they didn't start out that way. But I agree with that approach. That's my approach as well. I build something first to the point where it's safe to open source it, and then I open source it, and then begin to continue development in public, which I'm totally fine with. So that I was not opposed to that approach at all. But again, they've got a direction that they're going, and I don't know if any of you guys have ever been, as a developer, had to take over somebody else's code and been through what that feels like. It's a real mess. It's a real pain. And a lot of times you end up tearing whole segments out and rebuilding them, and that just takes time. Trying to going back to imagining that IO is going to win, and that we have Fund 11, 12, and 13 in in the bag, as it were, that the community will have access to 50 million ADA in Fund 10, Fund 11, Fund 12, Fund 13. And we will have access to the continuous test net. That's another vital component here. Having access to that continuous test net, and then having access to that Catalyst improvement fund, which is separate from the Catalyst operations fund, we can affect changes to Catalyst and enable IO to continue running the overall show for at least the next year. But that would allow a team, if they were so dedicated to do so, it would allow a team to take the open source tooling, become completely familiar with operating it, even operate a parallel version of the fund for a period of time, and run it in a test environment of some sort. Beat it up, play with it, do that sort of thing that we really don't have right now, because we have the continuous test net's not stood up yet. So if and personally, as a person who would evaluate the risk of something before spending my time and money or my work capital on it, the risk is too high for me right now to think that I could do that work better than IO could right now. Would that change over a year with an open continuous test net? Yeah. If I so chose, that would give me the time to evaluate it, build a team around it, do all those kinds of things. And if that was what I wanted to do, I could do that. But now, I don't think so. Personally, there may be other people that feel they could do it, but I'm not of that mindset. And that's why instead of thinking about taking over the process, I'm thinking, where are the areas that I can improve the process for everyone in our community? And that's where this is born from. This is born from the idea that we could potentially make incremental changes to improve it. And then, yes, if a team comes forward and shows that they've got the alacrity to do it, and they can do it better or cheaper or whatever it is that the community likes about it, that's fine. Having taken part in Voltaire, the idea that Catalyst is the only game in town is going to go away. Catalyst will still be here. It will still be the innovation engine, but there could be other very meaningful ways of allocating funds back into the community. And that could be fed through Voltaire, not necessarily through Catalyst. Go ahead, Thorsten.
I mean, we have to recognize that one thing is changing with Fund 10, and assuming for a minute that effectively the IOG team kind of gets the fund, which is they're not funded actually through IOG anymore. They're funded actually out of Catalyst, which is a big game changer, because at the end of the day, if you're working for someone, you have to kind of sing the song of the person who is kind of leading the helmet. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
And that in itself could create an own dynamic. So the way I see it, it's not either or. It might over time actually be an and rather than an or. Kind of like some improvements will come from the community. And I could see that even the operating environment in itself then kind of starts to simulate one or the other from the community to become a part of the operation. So from that perspective, the change in itself is quite good. The other comment, which you just kind of alluded to kind of funds might go in a different, will be allocated in a different way. My understanding is that will come through the membership-based organization, where Catalyst is going to be just one party who is asking for funds like others.
Mm-hmm.
I think that will also have a benefit in the sense that we can sharpen the focus on kind of grassroots funding topics rather than running the mill for other stuff. They could get funds which were probably more substantial if necessary to move things, and on the other side, not having an impact by draining effectively the funds from Catalyst. So I see that as a positive effect. If it doesn't work out, we don't know. We're all kind of a part of this experiment, and we're either going to sit there and going to laugh in a year time or 2 years time, or sit there and going to cry.
That's right.
Or it might even happen in October. We don't know. Hopefully not, but kind of we'll never know.
That's right. So I'm hoping, I genuinely, for our community, I actually hope, and I'll just be open, that I am voting for the IO team to continue Catalyst operations for another year for exactly the reasons that I stated. It's 150 million ADA more innovation funding that's coming back to the community. And with all of its warts, I still think Catalyst is a useful, meaningful way for our community to grow. And so there you go. That's my take, and I'm just a guy. But that's my take, and that's my place, and I'll happily stake that flag in the sand that for this next year, I think that that's the best approach for the community, and I hope that other people agree with me and that we can move that ball forward, knowing that there are areas like this where we can make real improvements and grow and actually get better at our innovation funding over time. And on that note, guys, this has been an incredible session. I appreciate all the feedback. I am going to make it just very available. I'm at Radio Astro everywhere. So if you need me on Telegram, Twitter, etc., Discord, whatever, reach out to me there. Anybody that's interested in continuing to pursue this, I will happily add you to the blank form, and I will and I'm going to be taking the feedback from today and implementing as much of it as I possibly can, and would look forward to you guys taking copies and trying it yourself and giving me any other feedback that you might have. So thank you all for your time today, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Lloyd.
Thanks, Lloyd. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Lloyd.